So this is Melody's World. I'm not doing it live today because, well, for one thing, I'm in Europe and most people wouldn't see it. But I've been quiet. Really, since I got here, I haven't posted much of anything. And largely it's because I'm in my own process of trying to sort through what is now known publicly, that I have known for decades because of my work with survivors of this sorts of abuse. And I have talked about it before. If you've been watching any of my lives, you know that I have, but I've tried to not overwhelm people with how horrible it is because most people think I'm a nut. Well, now perhaps people know. It's beyond anything that the sane of us would comprehend as being the least bit acceptable. And so we wonder, how in the world could people get themselves into those situations? Well, how could they find themselves being the perpetrators of such things? Well, having worked with survivors for decades, I do know that this is an old system. This isn't just the US, it's not just today, it's not just the past 50 years, it's 500 years. And it's been perpetrated by the Catholics, it's been perpetrated by the Americans, the English, the French, the Chinese, it's everyone. Anyone who has power in the world has gotten power through these means for the last 500 years. That may even sound more crazy than what you're willing to believe, but because I have seen what happens to people and how they get manipulated and controlled into doing things that they would normally not do through programming from an early age, programming through torture device, mind control, rape, murder, causing them to do murders, and then carrying the shame of that so they don't speak out. And as a result, people are easily controlled. And yes, it is an energetic thing. When I saw Monsters, Inc., I knew what they were showing us. I don't know if anybody else has seen that or recognizes what I'm talking about, but in that movie, it's very explicit in that it shows that these creatures, which they are creatures, get their energy, get their life force through children's terror, through terrifying children. This is not just a story. It is actually what I've seen to be true for decades. And I know there's a lot of us, a lot of therapists who know this fact, who've been afraid to say anything for a good reason. Back in the 90s, there were several of us that were trying to talk about it, were trying to be open about it, had attended even a conference with a former head of the FBI, Gunderson, who wrote a book and has worked with Catherine Sullivan, who was a mind control victim, and many others. The names that have come out, it makes me sick that most of the people are talking about people who've already died instead of talking about the people that are currently involved in it. And here's the thing. They have been so mind controlled and so manipulated that their minds don't function like yours and mine. They are incapable of feeling, largely because of how they've been treated. Because at a certain point, the human mind can only tolerate so much and dissociates to the point that they no longer feel. They no longer feel empathy. They no longer feel anything. And the only thing that can give them any kind of sense of humanity again is to see other people suffer. It's how they have been manipulated to behave. And for the first time, I realized that, this is Trump. Absolutely, this is Trump. But it's not just Trump. It is all of the people, the celebrities, I wouldn't say all the celebrities, but a large portion of the celebrities, but everyone who is in power, who has a lot of money, who has a lot of influence, they've all been compromised. And because money is so powerful in the United States, because money has become this we are so materialistic through the advertising that they've manipulated, right? We didn't create that. The advertising, the messages that we've got through media, we have learned to hold up people who have power and money as though they were gods almost. I mean, as far as Trump goes, there are plenty of people who do treat him as though he were a god and have a golden statue that's 15 feet tall that they worship. So when we're looking at all this stuff, it's very easy to say, oh, there's the bad guy, there's the bad guy, there's the bad guy, there's the bad guy. Yes, there are a lot of them. But what we need to understand is that all of them have been manipulated to a particular point for a reason. I don't even think I know the reasons. I can't pretend to know. But I do know that the majority of the people who are doing these horrific things have also been abused, tortured, mind controlled. And there's only a few people who have broken away. I've met some of them. My colleagues have met some of them who broke away, who were then ridiculed and poisoned, some of them, and treated as though they were mental health cases, when in fact, they were the normal ones. They were the normal ones. The ones whose dissociative systems organized in such a way that they could break through and be who they are, even if momentarily. And these people who continue to perpetrate, they can't. They can't break through that layers of their dissociative systems in order to find their humanity. Now, I'm not saying it's not there. I watched Dead Man Walking. I loved that film so much because it's all up to a person being able to get past all the parts of themselves that have been manipulated, controlled, abused, tortured, get past all that to find their true self. And we all have that within us, a true self. Our way of bringing up children has been to help them learn not to listen to themselves. And this contributes to this whole entire system, which keeps us trapped in not knowing who we are, knowing what we're capable of, knowing that there is a connection between all of us that is not this surface level of all these parts of us that do these various things in the world. Inside each of us, if we're willing to do the work, and it is work, there is a self that can care for the parts of us that were wounded, care for the parts of us that were destroyed by betrayals and trauma and abuse and mind control efforts. Inside of us, there is a self. All of us, even the worst of the worst, there is a self in there. Now, the trick is their system able to maintain their sanity when they become aware of the self. It's kind of why we're in this world where so many people are considered narcissists, right? That's a big thing these days. Narcissism everywhere. Narcissism comes from woundedness. It comes from a destruction of a person's sense of self. And in order to break through, and I have helped people do this, so I know it's possible to find a self, even when you've done things that you just can't fathom how you could have done them. Well, it wasn't the self that did them. These were parts of us that were, for whatever reason, either manipulated or controlled or perhaps squished into that being the only way you could survive. So when you start looking at these people who have done these horrendous things, it's not just one person. It's not just one system. It is a system that includes all of us, every walk of our life. And the only way out is through the self. The only way out is in finding our way back to ourself. Years and years ago, when I was first working with this population, I wrote this song, which I never had music to it until today, about how we can find our way back to ourself. Find your way back to me. And we can't do that by listening to other people. We can't do it by listening to the media. We can't do it by believing the things that Google shows us or Meta shows us. We can only do that by getting in touch with who we are. That allows us to see beyond the sickness that has infected us as a human race, really. And it's not about condemning those who did these horrific things, which, it's about breaking the system apart and finding ourselves. Even those people who are the most damaged, we have to put them in a place where they can get healing, because they are part of us, all of us. We are all part of everyone. That self that is inside of us is inside of every single person on the planet, inside of every living being. And if we don't, well, it's entirely possible that we will do what I suspect other generations, other epochs of time have done in the past, which is to destroy ourselves. But I'm a believer in love. You know, when people would ask me that since I have known about these things, how do I do it? How do I know about these things? My ex-husband was like, I can't talk about that. If you believe that, well, I can't even talk to you. Because people don't want to know the truth. Even today, there's people saying this can't be true. Even people who I, know have such good hearts. They just don't want to believe that such horrific things could be happening on our planet. But they are. They have been for 500 years. And the technocrats that run the world, the oligarchs that run the world, believe that by continuing to deny us access to ourself, then they can continue to have control. And as long as we stay disconnected from our true selves, as long as we allow ourselves to go numb through dissociation, then they win. They will continue to do what they do. Are you going to stay numb? Or are you going to spend the time not out there in the world listening to all this stuff, but going inside, getting to know the different parts of you that protect you so that you can survive this horrible stuff that happens in the world, and find your way back to yourself? that part of you that is angry, that part of you that's scared, that part of you that is people-pleasing, that part of you that acts out in anger, that part of you that just goes along with the flow and tries to please and tries to get along with everybody, that those parts of you that believe you're not worth anything, all of those are just parts of you. They are not who you are. But because we have been programmed through our ways of being raised into believing that shame is how you avoid behaving badly, and behaving badly means not pleasing your parents, not pleasing the authorities, not pleasing your teachers, right? But none of that is about self. And I honestly believe more and more of us are doing the work of getting connected to self. And that is the only way through this. It is not through criminal courts. It's not through hanging them up by their toenails. It is not by finding the bad guys. Because the bad guys exist everywhere. They're not the bad guys at all. As one of my mentor teachers, even though I've never met him, Richard Swartz talks about, there are no bad parts. Now, if you take that to an extreme, it means that there are no bad parts of these people that do these horrific things. The things that they're doing, the parts of them that did those things, were doing them because they were trying to help the self survive. And I know that sounds insane, but it's our survival reflex, right? That drives all of that. It's our humanness that drives those parts coming in and taking a hold and doing what they do. Our brain is designed to help us survive, and it will do it at just about any cost. The people who don't end up dead. Those of us who survive, well, we've had to either figure out a way to use our parts to manipulate the world around us so that we can survive, or we've gone inside, connected with ourselves, comforted those parts of us who believe such horrible things about themselves, help them to grow up and be a part of the system of self, that the self is leading. These people that are doing these things, they're not led by self. They're led by parts who are terrified, parts who are in horrific pain. But they don't have yet the courage to come out and face the pain that's inside and come to a place where they can awaken to love that is at our core. That is, well, that's who we are. What we are is pure love. That's what we are. That's what self is. Creativity, kindness, cooperativeness, creativeness. All of those words, C words that Richard Swartz talks about. Those are all who we are at core. Every last one of us, even the ones who've done those horrific things, in their core, that's who they are. Now they're not connected at all, not even slightly to their self. And maybe, they have enough parts that will feel bad enough if they were to expose themselves, their self, to that awareness, that it would be hard for them to survive it. I get that. It's part of how they program us. Program those who are in that 500-year-old system. Thank God, thank love, thank self, that any of us survived without having to go through that. But there are millions of people, not thousands, millions of people who have experienced these things, who have been either part of the system, or they have been ejected and exiled from the system, and they barely survive. A lot of these The homeless people that you see on the streets, guarantee you a large number of them are survivors of this thing that we've witnessed. And they can't mentally contain that awareness and look and sound sane. Their systems fall apart. This is humanity's opportunity to escape the trap of the system that we have been trapped in, imprisoned in, for 500 years. And I hope that that what I'm saying makes sense to some people, at least, and that you can step out of that paradigm of blame and shame in order to understand that the only way out is through love of self and recognition of the self in others, even those responsible for these horrific things. There is a self in there worth loving. I have witnessed too many people in my practice who have found themselves doing things that they find themselves unable to accept. And either they will collapse, their system will collapse and they'll fall apart, kind of lose their minds, or they will learn to love and accept who they are. And that is not who they are. That was just a part of them doing what it needed to do to survive in that moment, because it's what you were programmed to do. Those parts believed that's what they were supposed to do. But we can. We do have within us the ability to overcome that. But we can't do it by blame and shame. Not even the horrific things that have happened. You cannot point your finger at someone and say, this is your fault, because it's been going on for 500 years. Nobody alive today is responsible. Although I know there are people who say, well, I just saw some reel the other day about how these people are that they're never died, that they're actually aliens that live forever or whatever. Anyway, I don't know if that's true. Maybe it is. But I do know that humanity has within us the ability to find self. Every living creature has the ability to connect with a sense of self. Animals are lovely because they are innately connected with self. The more we can be like cats or dogs or horses and allow ourselves to connect with the essence of who we are, that's the only way that we get out of this. We have to extricate ourselves from the physical world of materialism and money grubbing and blame and shame and land grabbing and all of that. We have to move into a place of seeing ourselves with empathy and seeing others with the same empathy. It's not about saying it's okay that these things happen, because it's clearly not. It's not about excusing people's behavior, because it's not. We are all responsible for the choices that we make and the things that we do. But that doesn't mean we're to blame any of us. Any of us. I had a dear friend that was actually abused in this system, who is no longer with us. And she used to work in the prison systems. And she preferred working with the criminals to the guards, because the guards were so much more hardened than the criminals. She could more easily connect with their self. So we have to understand that those people, the guards, the authorities, the people who have gone along with all this stuff, they are so disconnected from their self, and feel sad for them that they are so disconnected from themselves. and see if we can rise up in love to embrace them in a way that they can find their way back to themselves. That may sound more crazy than anything I've said, right? Because all of this is so mind-blowing to most people. Those of us who've been exposed to it for decades, we're like, we've been trying to tell you. Now, I didn't come out publicly back when I first became aware of this because I wanted to still be able to help people. And I knew that if I spoke up, I would not be in a place where I could help people. I would be shut down. I might be poisoned. Who knows? All kinds of horrific things have happened to people who do until now. And now that it's out, it's easier to talk about it. Those powers that be still are there. They still think they have all the control. They still think that humanity can be manipulated through these parts, because many of us can. But if you're willing to do the work, you don't have to be a part of that system. You can find we are hardwired back to ourselves. We really are. If there are things in your system, parts of you that have done things that you cannot forgive yourself for, I highly recommend that you spend the time to get to know those parts and understand them and have compassion for the choices that they made, and understand that they can make a new choice, and that their choices at that time were necessary for their survival for whatever reason. But they can make different choices now. We can. We can heal. We can find ourselves. We can find our way back to who we are. I'm Melody Brooke. I'm a licensed professional counselor for multiple decades, and an author, and an actor, a screenwriter, and now a songwriter. And bless you. Find the love. Find yourself. Find that incredibly beautiful, pure essence of who you are. That's how we get out of this. It's not by attacking. It's not by bringing down the system. It is through finding ourself and growing the self of humanity so that we can overcome and transcend what we've been. Thanks for listening.